Hi, I'm Connie Steele from Flyable Associates and the Strategic Momentum Podcast.
And I'm Dan Yu from Fastbook Advisors.
And we're here to provide actionable tips and advice to help you through those challenging, work and career situations that we've all been through.
Yeah, we've all had our own struggles and with what to do, and more importantly, how to do it.
And for us, we're really passionate about sharing our own stories and wisdom that we've learned over the years, and we're continually learning through others. And we want to share the what, why, how, and when to address those barriers that have commonly gotten us all stuck.
So we hope these short videos can help you gain traction and momentum in your career and your work life. And so welcome to this week's episode on Managing Up.
So, Dan, this is obviously a very interesting topic. It's one in which we have to do this no matter what level that we're at. But it's one where it's pretty challenging. I think everybody struggles with because you just don't know how to do it. Particularly if you're starting your career, you're not really sure how to do it, what to say, how to say it. But it's such an important skill to have.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody's ever instructed me on how to do it.
Oh,
it's
no.
all been right. It's all been. We just got to figure it out and try to maintain our relationships with both our peers and our managers, and how do we form that closer team bond? It's not easy. It's not easy by any stretch.
Absolutely not. And I think what I've learned over time, maybe you have too, is that this ability to know how to best manage up is so critical to your ability to create that momentum and get you really to be able to do the things that you need to do in your job. Like those relationships in an organization are so important to your success, and knowing how to build them and manage them, whether it's up, whether even it's across or even down, really do matter. But to your point, it's you're never taught, and it can be incredibly intimidating.
It can be intimidating because if you take a step back from your own career and you think about what you're trying to accomplish, sometimes that managing up process gets you so hyper-focused on the task of the day without really taking a step back, right? And look at your career arc as a whole. And so, there's always that, there should always be a tickle in the back of your mind saying, I really want to make sure that this works today, but also has long-term impact.
I totally agree. So What advice would you have to help somebody start to learn how to manage up? Because there's different elements of managing up.
Yeah.
Some is managing up to address a problem or issue or initiative that you want to get forward. But there's another thing of managing up to help you matriculate through your career and get to the next level.
Sure. I think with any organization, it starts with the why, right? What's, why, what are the goals of not just your manager, but what are the goals of the organization, right? So understanding the corporate, from a top-down perspective, what are the corporate goals? And maybe what are the goals of your division? And then what are the goals of your manager? And how does that translate up? So if you can understand that, and how does your little bit as someone that's starting their career, how does your effort translate up? I think that can give you an easy context, and then applying that in the what are your actions? So is it, if you're a salesperson, are you going to sell more, or are you going to put more projects out? What do you need to execute? Now, hopefully they've defined that on the way in when
it doesn't always happen.
Doesn't always happen, right? So, has the HR department and training department, have they effectively communicated exactly what you're going to do? Maybe you need to learn from your peers because maybe they've figured out little workarounds. Maybe you need to really connect with your manager on what their expectations are, right? And that's the why. But it's also a bit of the what too. What are the most important KPIs? Right,
100% agree. I think that's great advice to start with, is what and why. Because when you can take a step back, see the landscape, process all those things that drive what your manager is thinking about, what they're honestly rewarded by. So if we take the situation, you're trying to get some initiative approved and moving forward, but you kind of feel like there's some issues and challenges. Mm-hmm. So how do you manage up to your boss and convince them, or then manage their boss to do so? And right. You got to get to the root of why they are taking a certain position that they're taking. And that is then also aligning it to what are the goals. So when you look at it from that point of view, that's so critical. And I will tell you from my own experience, it wasn't obvious to me. I was like, well, I just need to push this. I got to push this through. And I'm going to say, I got to do this and this and this. And the argument was very tactical in the beginning. And I wasn't able to see the big picture, to be able to really influence in the most effective way, because I couldn't see the why and the what from the beginning.
Yeah, and so you and I both worked in both medium-sized and small, and but also large organizations, and so the communication style that your manager will require or need usually is different based on the size of the organization.
Yes.
Right. And maybe the pace and the tempo, and so I'd love to hear from the level. But so understanding how your manager wants to hear it, right? Yeah. How do they just want the data, or do they want to make the presentation themselves, right? Or do they want to just forward your report? I've seen it all, right? And I think the right answer might be, it's going to be somewhere in the middle, right? Because those are the two extremes. And I'd love to hear from you. What have you seen?
Oh, well, I agree with all that. I think it completely depends on who. So one of the things that we didn't also say, I think that's important for anybody to figure out how to manage up, is know who the person is that you are trying to manage up to. To your point, how do they absorb the data? What is their personality type? What gets them excited? What's getting them detracted? All those things are really critical to understand. But I think that once you understand who, the other piece is, to me, while this may not answer your question, it's timing too. Like, no.
Sure. When. Right. The when.
When's important. When you have the conversation to build your argument, whatever that argument may be, or whatever that initiative, or whether it's personal or whether it's a team thing, when you're looking to present a case, let's put it this way, you're looking to present a case to do something. And so when you understand that, know that there's certain times of when that's a good time, and there's certain times where it's a really bad time. And that comes down to also knowing who it is, because there might be times where they're naturally more agitated or not because of certain meetings they came out of, which they have every week, or not. And also realize, to get back to your earlier point of, the different scenarios, actually make sure you understand all the scenarios. Play out the chess game. Understand the pieces that influence their thinking, their behavior, their style of communication. Then the appropriate plan to address them and be more effective in arguing your case, and then hopefully winning your case.
Right. And to the point around when, some managers, actually I would say most managers, they want to give you more responsibility, not just execute what it takes to hit the goals, but also be able to talk about it, to present all the great things that are happening. And I think the manager that allows the employees to take victory laps, I think those types of managers end up having a lot more loyalty, right? And
100%.
100%, right? So spreading kudos around instead of taking it for themselves. I think those are the types of managers that you would like to work for, right? And also you would want to be that type of manager, right? Because as long as we're all pulling on the oars, it almost kind of doesn't really matter who takes the victory lap. But Yeah. So,
Great. But I think you have to know if that's the kind of manager you have too, which again gets back to
that's
who.
right.
So,
Who?
one of the things that's so important, again, that context is if the who is somebody who naturally is more insecure, tends to feel threatened, wants to control the message, needs to feel like they have to be that hero to everything. There's only so much managing up that you can do.
There's only so much, right?
But you have to understand all of that, because that will give you probably some peace of mind as well, to realize that it's not all you, because sometimes the fear of managing up is like, oh, I don't want to mess up. I don't want to make a mistake. It's my fault. And is always two sides to everything. But until you can objectively look at that, get the data behind all this, because it's still a data collection exercise before you can build your case,
right?
Then you'll know the best way to approach it. So let's recap.
Well, I've got a few questions around certain situations, right? So, what about when there's bad news, right? I think it's always important to let your manager know if there's a pitfall that you can see down the road. You got to tell them now, not right when you're about to hit the pitfall. So, I think that's super important. So that's one that can be done really early. With regards to managing your own career, I think it's really important for the employee to let the manager know and having a good relationship, an open communication relationship on how you like to be managed too, right? Because
great point. Yes.
Because then that's going to help you, utilize your talents, have the organization utilize your talents, how to best achieve the organizational goals.
Actually, I can't read your mind. I think that's a really great point, is that when you can have the two-way relationship, so it's not just one way. And I think by default, when you start your career, it can sometimes be one way because you want to please them. But you realize that not everybody can read what's in your mind. So the more that you're able to engage in a dialogue and provide perspective of what you may need and what you're looking for, and not assume that they know what you're looking for, because they can't. Managers are so busy all the time with things that they don't. So you need to be smart about setting your own expectations and clearly communicating what that looks like. And it has to be realistic. I mean, sometimes there are things where they just can't, but understand where they're coming from so that you both can work together.
Yeah. And by the way, and if we can go back to the who, I think there's a couple different managers that I would love to address. One of them is the new manager, right? So somebody that's coming in above you that they're not going to know as much as you. They're just not. They're new to the organization. Some of that you have to bring up to speed. Ultimately, the goal still is to manage them and how are they going to look good in front of their bosses, right? And so there's that nascent relationship that has to be established, right? And really getting them up to speed as soon as possible can only help your career out.
Yes.
And now I've been a remote manager of employees, but I've never had your experience, which is to manage a whole team remotely. So I would love to hear more about how you did, how you executed that, and were they effective in maintaining the tempo with you?
Absolutely. So I think for them to manage me had to start with me setting the rules of engagement, I guess, is the best way to put it. Because they don't know. They're there to please. They don't know how often I want to connect with them. So I had to look outward, it's all about me. I realized early on that the best performance that I'm going to get is to also understand them as well and meet them halfway and understand what kind of style and cadence and approach would work. So it was very much like a partnership, I would say, is that talking to them incredibly frequently, getting a sense for what they would deliver to me, and coaching them constantly, and getting them also comfortable with communicating back to me, this is working, this isn't working. Yet it's also me having the self-awareness and anticipating what could work and didn't work. So
Right.
I
Yeah.
never went into it as a one-way kind of workflow, I guess, or approach. It had to be two-way. And I said to them, here's the best way to manage me. This is what I need. And create full transparency. Here are the situations that I'm dealing with as a manager. Here are kind of the crazy circumstances that we're in today. So they have a big picture view of the business or different team members or what I'm facing. So the more they were brought into my world and what I had to deal with day to day as a manager, the more they were effective in thinking through, oh, well, maybe this is the kind of information that she needs. Maybe this is where I need to support them, or this is what I need to say. I never did things in a vacuum. I think that is so critical to manage up for your boss. You know, it would be ideal if the boss could articulate that, but if they don't, take the time to understand the world that they're living in.
Right.
That gives you insight to support them in the best way possible.
Right. If they're totally hands off, with the opposite of micromanaging,
yes.
It's not ideal, right? It's not ideal, but you can definitely work in that environment. As also with management that potentially is indecisive, right?
Yes.
Or they may have made conflicting decisions which are confusing. But if you can understand what their motivations are, I think everything should be able to be worked out if you have an open communication. So,
and to add to that, if you're in that situation where you don't have as much of a dialogue with your manager and you're trying to understand the landscape, ask others, because inevitably you probably have relationships with people that they don't. Mm-hmm. You could start to piece together what's happening, and this starts to build your political, competency too.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
So if you start to see what's happening, piece together the data, talk to different folks, you now have some information that your manager may not. So you're able to better manage them, but you could help them manage others. And then you start to become even more valuable in a very different way. And they see your ability to straddle the organization as just an incredible asset.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, time to recap?
Absolutely. Yeah, sure. Let's do it now.
All right. I know we covered a lot.
Yeah.
So I'd say one of the first things that we talked about in terms of being able to manage up in any situation was who, right?
Absolutely understanding who it is, right? And what are their motivations? Really, I mean, how do they fit into the larger scale organization?
Mm-hmm. And then what, which was understand those goals and objectives that they are dealing with. And then when you are ready to have that conversation, this gets into the when and how. So when we talked about when, timing is critically important. There's a good time to have a conversation and there's a bad time to have a conversation.
Yeah. And do they want it rapid fire or just as requested? Or is there a regular schedule? End of the month, end of the quarter? How do they want it? Right? When do they want it? How do they want it? Do they want all the data or do they just want a summary?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. So I think when you take a step back, so much of this is think about you're building a case. You're building your own personal business case. And when you look at this as building your own personal business case, it all starts with what's the goal and objective? Who's the target audience? What are the strategies? What are the tactics to get there? Lay that out ahead of time. If this doesn't come automatically to you, lay it out like a plan. When you lay out a plan, and then you can identify the right timing, you're going to be so much better equipped to honestly accomplish and get success out of what you're building the case for.
Right. And building that relationship capital with not just your managers, but everybody in the organization as well.
Absolutely. So thanks for watching, and until next time.
Remember that you have to manage your career as a business.
Because in today's world, you have to understand the business of work.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you.